Welcome to Business Class. I'm Steve Ekstrom from Learn Tourism, a nonprofit academy dedicated to advancing the tourism industry through innovative training and sustainable practices. Our mission? To empower travel professionals and communities with the knowledge they need to create meaningful, authentic, and sustainable tourism experiences. Ready to join us on this journey? Visit learntourism.org and start making a difference today.
My name is Bryan Lavin, and I am a professor here at Johnson Wales University for the College of Hospitality Management.
Now, you mentioned just finishing up defending your dissertation.
Correct.
What was that on?
My dissertation topic was looking at motivations and barriers towards user-generated content marketing campaign participation. So in other words, in less academic words, is how do we get more people to create better content while they're traveling and then share it with a brand so that they can use it for a marketing campaign. So it's a pretty fun, interesting study.
A lot of times when people are doing their dissertations and doing those major research projects, they come across some unexpected findings.
Yeah.
Was there anything that sort of jumped out at you as, oh, I didn't see that coming?
There was a couple of things, actually. One of them I'm going to explore actually later on today to officially wrap it up. When you're talking about social media usage, there's always this stereotype that it's meant for a younger generation. And in my data set, we had a great representation across the board of 18, and I think the oldest participant was in their 80s. So it was a really wide range of ages. And what we found was that there was a clear kind of cutoff in the later 20s where it starts to drop off precipitously as someone's age increases. One of the big limiting factors towards participation is, in fact, age, scientifically speaking. But for according to this data, every 1 year that you grow in age, the likelihood that you're going to participate in sharing a photo with a tourism brand goes down by 8%. Pretty significant reduction year over year. And then you start to compound that, right? And it becomes, in fact, a young person's game. The other interesting finding that came out of it, there was 5 kind of factors that we looked at in terms of someone's attitude towards creating user-generated content, the control that they feel over it, the feeling of empowerment. Can they create what they want to create? And then we looked at technical ability and then social norms. So how people feel about the content that you're creating or I'm creating, right? And then what that does to our motivation. And interestingly, of all of that, empowerment became the one that stood out above the rest as the key towards getting folks to participate, which makes sense, right? When someone says, one of the things that I based this whole project off of was I was working with a local tourism board here, and we were working on Pizza Week, and they did the standard UGC campaign of, hey, take a picture of you eating pizza and tag your 2 buddies that you'd like to eat pizza with and tag the DMO and tag this and add this hashtag. And they had 0 participation in that particular campaign. So we looked at it, and so let's look at this differently. So the key finding there is if you empower people to create the content that they want to create about their experience that they are having authentically in the moment, good or bad, you'll tend to get more participation out of those types of campaigns. However, if you really start to dig into empowerment and say, what is it? What then falls out of it is that there's 3 major factors. One, it's feeling in control of the process. So flipping those prompts to the user side of things versus the branding side of things. The second one is a person's attitude. So they need to feel good about it. So we have to build a bit of a relationship before we ask them, right? Make people feel good, bring them in, which is why a brand ambassador thing is so critical in tourism market or social media marketing. And then the third one is technical ability. So everyone has a smartphone, right? The cameras are really good. They come loaded with editing content and abilities, and the platforms are all really user friendly, but it's that feeling of I can produce something that I would want other people to see, right? It's not just my own personal photo now. I'm doing it for a company or a brand. So I need to put my best foot forward or do something more special, when in reality, we don't need to be that polished in user-generated content marketing. It can be a little bit more authentic.
There's an element of that, and one of my favorite words and a learned trait of mine is
Yeah,
empathy.
definitely. I think if we were going to dive back into it, which I plan to do, the empowerment one becomes a really interesting one, right? When I was analyzing the dissertation data, there's like the alpha or the R square value, which determines how much of the problem are you solving, right? When I was doing the regression analysis, empowerment was like solving 56% of the problem. And then everything else is adding a little bit on top of that, right? And we got to a pretty high R square. But if you really start to dig into what is empowerment, right? What is that feeling of empowerment? How can we empower people to create content or have good experience or whatever those kind of things are? You start to break down the elements of what is empowerment. And it starts sounding a lot like having a positive attitude, feeling in control, having support of your friends and family or the organization, right? Having that relationship, having that safe space. And I think from a marketing perspective, if I then start to think about it, if I'm a destination marketer or I'm trying to sell my product or something like that, I really need to flip the ask, right? So it's no longer do this for me so I can use your content to market my product. Instead, it's show me how you're engaging with the product. I want to see how you're seeing whatever the experience is through your lens, and then maybe I'll use it for marketing. But really, it becomes like this kind of feedback loop almost where we are starting to use it as, are people really experiencing the authentic thing that we're saying that they're going to experience? Or is it a different thing? Or how can we improve it? Or how can we bring more people in? Or so I think the UGC becomes very transactional in a lot of ways. It's take this picture, post it, share it with me, and I'll repost it. And that's cool. Like there's some clout that comes with it. People do still get excited about that. But I think really when you tap into it, it becomes a relationship builder where now you start to really engage with people. And then the fallout is a tactical marketing thing at the end of the day. So that was one of my kind of big like aha moments. I led in my dissertation defense with, it seems silly to base a dissertation off of taking a picture of pizza, but there's a lot of thought that goes into like, why are we asking for that? What does it mean? How does it engage with the community? How does it help businesses? How does it promote economic activity? And then really we're just asking the wrong way, right? So we should be asking more from the user perspective versus the business perspective. So
there are a couple things that come to my mind. One is I travel all the time. We've talked about this. I'm in a van somewhere.
Yeah.
99% of the year where I have no idea half the time. I woke up this morning not realizing where I was. But one of the things that I say often is that people are generally kind and simply need a reminder and permission to express that kindness. I think the same thing goes with the ambassador programs and the tourism advocate programs, in that people are generally proud of their communities. They generally love what it is that they've come to know and call home, and they genuinely want to share that with other people.
Yeah.
The challenge that we seek to overcome in training is how do you channel that into something that gives back? How do you take that want and passion and desire to share your community? How do you actually channel that into actionable items? And this is the same case, whether it's the ambassador program, that once you finish the program, you get a chance to volunteer. Once you finish the program, you get to network with your peers and you get invited to work the desk at the airport or whatever it might be. You just have to let people know how to get involved.
For sure. Yeah. As you're saying that, it makes me think about a lot of ways in my previous life when I was working in the DMO space, I was heavily involved with MPI and working with their boards and doing all these other things, and then started getting into volunteer management. And the one thing we always pushed was when you're asking someone to do something for you as a volunteer, right? There's a clear, we want you to tell your story. We want you to share your experience or talk about how awesome your community is or whatever these things are. It has to come back to a meaningful ask, right? They have to get something out of it. You have to get something from it, but it has to be like a meaning behind it. It can't be transactional. There needs to be more to it. The ambassador program thing is really interesting. I've been thinking a lot about how do you get the biggest fans of a place are the people that live there, presumably, right? How do we get them to start to tell their stories more? And I do think it comes down to taking a bit of control away from, we have this strict brand narrative that we have to stick to and whatever. And instead, doing some of that man on the street kind of activity, and you're just walking up to people and talking to them and asking their stories and using the tiny mics that you see all over social media and starting to build just that introduction of, tell me why you love living here, or tell me why you love coming to this place, or whatever those things are. And then start to scaffold that whole ambassador program, like you're saying, right? And just like a sales funnel, you're probably going to lose people along the way. But what you may end up with is some really passionate, excited people that are not social influencers. They don't have an ulterior motive. They're doing it genuinely for the love of the place or the community or the organization.
And I think that's what travelers are drawn to as well.
Yeah.
We want to meet the local. Yeah, sure, it's nice to know that there's the old Italian neighborhood in town,
Sure.
but introduce me to the guy that makes the cheese.
Yeah, there's a lot tying it back to tourism marketing stuff. There's a ton of studies that are out there that are written that are showing that agency generated content is just not even trustworthy anymore, right? I think that's an interesting thing to start to noodle around, is that societally we've gotten so predisposed to, everyone's trying to sell me anything. When I go on my phone, I'm being sold to. When I'm on my email, I'm being sold to. When I'm watching TV, I'm being sold. We've societally learned to shut that off, right? That's why people cut the cord and they don't watch TV anymore and they do all these other things. We know when we're being advertised to, and we haven't caught up on that other side. I think the key there is, how do we tell those stories, which will turn into marketing? And one of the case studies I use all the time in one of my classes is Fort Worth. Their DMO does an amazing job of telling the stories of the people that just live in Fort Worth. They have a whole site dedicated and seasons of people from the Fort Worth area just talking about how their business connects to the local community, what the city means to them, why they chose to set up their business there, and how they engage with the area. The one that I always use as the best example is, there's a barber on there who runs a barbershop in downtown Fort Worth. And he just talks about how the barbershop is like a microcosm of all the communities that are in Fort Worth and all the people that hang out. And he could be cutting the hair of a cowboy one minute and a student the next minute. And it's just the conversations that come out of it and how he feels connected to that location. And I'm like, man, that's the essence, the magic that we should be striving for, right?
Another great example that we share with people is Bermuda.
Yeah.
Bermuda did a series of testimonials from community members, not the
Yeah.
visitors, from the
Yeah.
community members in what they love about their community and what they love about their job that gives back to the community, that takes care of tourists and whatnot. Really great example there. I'll share it with you. There's also a woman on social media who I would say is in her 70s, and she walks around this small town with her mic and she tells her stories.
Yeah.
This is the corner where Mikey, whatever, tried to kiss me in 8th grade.
I
And
love that. Yeah.
she goes, and this is where my bike was stolen when I was 7.
Yeah.
And this
Yeah.
is where we found it. And it makes you want to go and visit the place because there are those stories. And we all yearn for those stories that we may not have the time to learn from our grandparents and parents in the way that previous generations did. And we
Yeah.
look to other people sharing their experience and crafting that authenticity for us because maybe it's something that we've been missing.
I think about, even just as I'm that process of, I'm going to a location, right? Like, we were just in Tampa for the DI conference, and I've never been to Tampa before. And it's like my own information search. Like, where did I go? What did I do? You go on Google, you see what's around. But really, for me, it was starting to follow like their Instagram account. It was starting to reach out to some people that I know that live in Tampa to start to ask, hey, what are some interesting kind of fun things to do? So I think that whole information search kind of thing is starting to spread out. The challenge then is, how do you get your arms around it, right? Like, how do you find that 70-year-old lady who's willing to walk around with a tiny mic and tell her stories and post it on social media and make it like fun and engaging and have the personality to captivate someone to find it? And then how do you get that content in front of the people that need to talk about it or want that kind of information to see? I think that becomes a really murky kind of place where it's hard to figure out what is that pathway towards storytelling and then putting it in front of the audience in the right spot, you know?
What is something you learned from your work in the DMO space that serves you well now as a professor and educator?
Hmm. That's a great question. A lot. The great thing for me about DMOs and having that as my 100% tourism experience leading into this role in academia. I've never worked at a hotel. I've never worked at a venue. I've never worked for a travel operator or anything like that. I've only worked in DMOs since the beginning of my career. The way that I think that has served me really well is that from a very young age, in my early 20s, I was seeing this incredible interconnectivity of the entire industry, the entire ecosystem in a destination, right? Like how the convention center fuels the hotels and fuels the restaurant community, and how events can bring a destination to life. I talk about all the time. One of my first things that I did, first thing, I was a senior in college, and I was helping to coordinate the NCAA March Madness basketball tournament. We had the first and second rounds in the city. And someone had an idea at the DMO table to do a coupon booklet. We thought, like, we have all these people coming in, let's get them out into the community and do a little coupon booklet. I was calling around to restaurants and saying, hey, this is coming. We want to alert you guys. We'd love if you could offer a discount. I cannot tell you how many times I got yelled at by a restaurant owner. I had the phone slammed down on me. I was told, no, absolutely not. I couldn't understand. I'm like, why, right? This feels like such a no-brainer to me. The root of it, when you start to unpack it, was the restaurant community in the city said, why would we discount when we have a captive audience coming in? They're gonna come find us anyway. So what instead we would like you to do is, instead of taking money out of our pockets, help us promote to make sure that we're like fully sold out on the Friday, Saturday, Sunday of the tournaments and all these other things. That for me was like a little life lesson that I've always carried with me, is that it's not always in the DMO world, it's not always about the visitor. It's often about the community. And I think even now in the current DMO landscape, it's probably even more so about the community. Someone said at the DI conference, there's enough travel for everyone, right? There's enough travel to go around. What we really need to do is lock in on who we are and what we do. The other great thing, just coming from an academic perspective, is that I'm one of the few people here at, I'll admit it, at Johnson & Wales, who fully understands how that interconnectivity all works, right? We tend to, I think, in academia be a little siloed. We will focus on hotel management and operations, or we'll focus on event management as a discipline, or get into sustainable tourism in a very high theoretical level. And there isn't a whole lot of pulling all of these things together to say, how does it apply to everyday life, but also making the world a better place. So I feel well suited now, and it's been a interesting perspective to have as I've gone through this academic journey now, to start to say the theory is great, the tactical is great, but I think where the real magic happens is when we figure out application, right? And how do we take these big picture theories of tourism can solve all of the world's problems and make communities better. The rising tides raise all ships, but how do we really do it? What is the real application to that? How do we connect those two things? I'm going in my 9th year, and I'm just at the tip of the iceberg there on diving into true application stuff. But that's, I think, where things are headed.
Certainly appreciate you taking the time to share your story with me. You're an easy person to talk with. I love it. We should do this more often.
For sure.
If
I
folks
would
want
love
to
to
get
do
in
a
touch
part
with you
two.
or want to learn from you, how would they go about doing that?
I think I'll throw a couple out there, right? So LinkedIn's always a great spot on the professional side. You can look for Bryan Lavin on LinkedIn and find me pretty easily. I'm the guy with the big screenshot or headshot there. The other place, email is always great. Here at Johnson Wales University, it's brian.lavin@jwu.edu. As a small plug there, I would love to find and partner with a couple of destinations to do that application-based research. Take some of the theoretical stuff that I've been working on and do some deeper dives into case study type work. Definitely open to collaboration and opportunities in that research space. And then something we didn't talk about, but might be a fun thing for your listeners, is if you love coffee as much as I love coffee, you can find me on Instagram as well at Coffee with Lav, where it is a 100% site dedicated to just making really good coffee at home. So
Are you one of those that has the science lab set up to make coffee? You
no,
are.
no, quasi. It's a quasi science lab. Yeah.
Okay. I
The
visited a
I'll give you
coffee roaster.
the quick. No, I don't roast my own beans. I let the pros do that. But I've always been a coffee guy. Always love it. Just enjoy the ritual of kind of coffee and the process, especially getting the morning going. When my third kid was born, she didn't sleep in anything. I ended up actually taking a semester leave from here to take care of her. I'm not the type of person that can just sit around and hang out with a baby all day. I need to be doing something. I poured myself into espresso making, and I bought this. It's like a little
Ah,
contraption. You like had to heat everything up and pour the water in, and you pulled on a lever to press the coffee through. And I learned in this very cheap kind of rudimentary way all the nuances of just making really great espresso. I have upgraded my machine. I have a really nice espresso machine that I got from Milan, and I have a better grinder. We're growing. We're
yeah.
becoming spaceship level for sure.
You're one step away from a Bunsen burner and some
Right.
Pyrex. I've seen it. Well,
Coffee shop status. Yeah.
fantastic. Thanks again for joining me. I appreciate you.
For
And
sure. Yeah. Thank
we'll
you.
be in touch.
Sounds good.
Thanks for tuning in to Business Class. This episode was brought to you by Learn Tourism, the nonprofit academy where we advance the tourism industry with cutting edge training and sustainable practices. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to visit learntourism.org to learn more about our programs and how you can get involved. Until next time, stay curious, continue learning, and making a difference through tourism.